and welcome to the Flame and Fiber podcast. My name is Barbara. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Diva S. And I'd like to say hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to new viewers. I have a few new subscribers. Thank you for subscribing. I love subscribers. Dennis heard all about you all. And welcome back to everybody who has been here before and has come back again. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for all the comments and messages. They just make my day, and I cannot tell you how happy I am to talk to you guys, both on the podcast and through social media. So thank you so much for everyone who's reached out. I really appreciate it. I'm drinking my coffee today. I guess that's, you know, it's a podcast. Got to start with what you're drinking. It is, for me, first thing in the morning. It is not first thing in the morning to anyone else. But this is my first cup of coffee in my beautiful goldfinch mug that David Dog Dare gave me. That I love. Oh, that first cup of coffee. Even when you're multitasking, drinking coffee and doing a podcast. Oh, I'm sorry for the slurping. I won't be editing out slurping, I'm afraid, because the less editing I do, the happier I am. So I will be editing out coughs and things like that that I think are... Oh, shoot. Okay, I'm back. I have a couple finished objects. This is a knitting podcast, although I do a lot of talking. I'm a talker, you know. So you'll learn a lot about me over the course of events. Before I forget, the winner of the roulotte shawl pattern did not contact me. So I drew again. I drew between 2 and 17, which is the same thing I did this time. And this time Siri picked number 2, which is you, Susan Sophie Chihuahua. So Susan, let me know you heard this, and I will have Piper Chanel Wu send you the roulotte shawl. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. And here's a picture of me in my roulotte shawl so everybody can see. This is a beautiful pattern by Chanel Wu, who did it. It was a commission from the Crafty Toads, and I did I was one of the many test knitters, and it was such a fun shawl to knit, and it's coming out for full, you know, release of just the pattern in October, but you can get the kits. The Crafty Toads are selling kits for a beautiful version of the shawl, and they'll do a custom kit for you from their yarn if you don't want to make it in the colors that they have in their kit, which is not the colors that I did, because I did that out of my stash. But anyway, Sophie Chihuahua, get in touch with me, Susan, and you get the roulotte shawl. Siri picked you. Okay. Speaking of Susan, I will confess, when Siri picked Susan, I was like, oh, people are going to think I'm picking my friends. But then I realized that I felt like I was friends with the vast majority of people who wanted that shawl pattern and were in that thread. So I guess the chances of me not picking a friend were going to be pretty small, because there are many of you out there who I am, you know, feeling like I'm friends with. And so I felt like, oh, they're going to think I picked my friend. And then I thought, well, you know what? They were all friends, so it was okay. But anyway, Siri picked her. Susan was one of my swap partners, and she gave me this beautiful yarn in my swap package. It's Ancient Arts fiber in the Ancient Arts yarns in the German Shepherd colorway, which is, of course, my pearly girl. So these are my pearl socks. And the heels and toes I just did in a Cascade sock yarn, black. I don't often do contrasting heels and toes, so that was kind of fun. And they turned out so beautiful. And I made up this pattern, which is sort of stripes of broken rib and stockinette. And they turned out so cool. So I love this yarn. And I love how the socks turned out, and I'm going to love wearing these socks. this winter. Can't wait for it to be cold. I'm wearing my Bryce cardigan that I finished on. I showed it to you on my last podcast. I don't think I've taken it off since I podcast last. I must have worn it 10 times. Well, I get cold in air conditioning, so I was at the Lancaster Fiber Festival this weekend, or on Thursday. I'll tell you about that. I took that because, you know, you go to a conference center or anything like that, you're going to freeze. Even if you are not the kind of person who freezes, you still freeze. But I'm cold in my house, and we keep our house at 72, which is not super cold. But I just get cold, so I'm wearing my sweater. I've worn it a lot. I love the sweater. And this is Swan's Island yarn. Hanafetic, Bryce, B-R-I-S-E. So anyway, this is my one finished object that I have in my hands to show you. I'm so excited to be kind of making socks again. Well, that's an exaggeration. I'm not excited to be making socks still. But I'm glad that I'm making socks because I love the sock. I love how that pool down there. So interesting, the difference between sort of the stripy top, and then when you change the pattern, it starts pooling. Lovely. Anyway, finished object number 1. Finished object number 2, I'm going to put a picture here because I mailed it already. My granddaughter's birthdays are in August. And now that they've moved to Florida, the urgency for a fall sweater has gone out the window. Although I suppose I'll be making them sweaters for Christmas. But I'm not sure. I haven't decided what I'm going to do. But I didn't make them sweaters for their birthday like I did last year. So I made Sammy the Egg to Turtle by Susan B. Anderson. And it's a free pattern, and I think it's like on the Knitting Daily website, Knit and Crochet Now. So you can find it on Ravelry, and it'll take you to a link. It's called the Egg to Turtle by Susan B. Anderson. It's a free pattern, and so you start out with an egg, and then it flips inside out, and then you have a turtle. And I did not get a picture of it with its face. I did just a little smile face on it, and it turned out really cute. And I sent that to her, and she did not get it in time for her birthday, so that was too bad. And I haven't, which was last Sunday, and I haven't talked to them. Well, I talked to them Monday during the day, but the mail hadn't come yet, so hopefully she got it. I guess I'll call them tonight and see, make sure she liked it. But that is finished object number 2. And I have an almost finished object number 3 because Isabel's birthday, my 5-year-old, my granddaughter who will be 5, her birthday is next Sunday. Their birthdays are 2 weeks apart. So, of course, they have to get their own package. And besides, Nana wasn't done with Isabel's. I had so much trouble trying to figure out what to make Isabel, to tell you the truth. I wasn't sure what she would like. So I am making her the flower fairy. So this is the flower. And I just blocked it. That's what I ran out. This is what I forgot. And this is what so it's a little, like a little sleeping bag. But it needs to be blocked. I'm going to mail it tomorrow, so I better get dry. I put these petals have a little puff in them, so I hope I didn't puff them up too much. And then this is the fairy. It's not quite finished. I need to put little tiny, the tiniest little wings on it and a little hat. And I think I'm going to put a little tiny face because she's 5 and she needs something maybe a little literal. But anyway, it sits in that little sleeping bag. So this is the flower fairy. This is from Making Magazine, Susan B. Anderson, and this is the first Making Magazine. The second Making Magazine, she also has little things, but I think those are the butterflies, because I think Flora was the first Making Magazine, Flora, I think it's the first one, and so this is the Flora. Aren't they adorable? So I will be mailing this to Isabel tomorrow. So it's dry, little flower dry. So I will be making a tiny little hat and tiniest little wings to put on this little fairy and a little face. I'll be doing that tonight. So that is not quite a finished object, but that's it for your being able to see it because it's going out tomorrow. So those are the granddaughter's birthday presents. So those are what I've finished since I spoke to you last. I guess I'll just keep going with the knitting. So when last we met, if you watched my last podcast, that is, I was working on the Portage cardigan by Melissa Shashwari, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, Melissa Shashwari. This is a sweater that, and this is the back of it, that I tried on at SSK in the try it on room and really, really liked it. This was a sweater that Laura, Lala of the Knit Girls declared everybody looks good in this sweater. And a cardigan with pockets is just what I'm going to want to wear this winter. So I decided to cast it on, and I cast it on almost immediately. And I showed it on the last podcast, and I had realized that I had made a mistake in the back detail, which is 1x1 cables. Essentially, they're crossed stitches. You don't use a cable needle, you just pick them up and cross them. Just left, right, all the way across. And it makes an amazing texture, but I wasn't loving the knitting of that detail. And I didn't realize it when I tried it on, what the back design was. So anyway, this is where I am now. And this pin right here, it's a top-down cardigan, so this is the top. That pin indicates where I frogged to after my last podcast. Where the lifeline is now is about where I was. And I took out 3 or 4 inches. I might have been a little further than that because I had trouble, because it's a cross stitch and everything. It was kind of a pain in the neck to get it back on the needles after I ripped it back 4 inches. So I ended up ripping it back probably a few more rows than necessary, but because I had trouble picking it up again. So I put a lifeline in. At some point I said, you know what, if I have to do this again, that's a pain in the neck. So I put a lifeline in, and I'm well past my lifeline now, but so I had done one of my rows the opposite of what it should have been, and I noticed it. I didn't notice it for a few inches after I started knitting it, and I thought I was okay with it and nobody would have noticed. But it's funny when you record, you often see things that you don't, things look different on the video than they do in real life sometimes. And it was so obvious to me when I showed it on the podcast that it really started to bother me. And I was, and if you watch that podcast, I was hemming and hawing if I was going to rip it back or not. I would have to decide. Well, the next morning when I was having what I call my twilight sleep, where you're half in and half out and you're kind of awake and kind of not awake, I was busy ripping out that knitting in that twilight. I dream it, I'm tearing out that. So I knew that I needed to go take it out. And I did appreciate the comments of people saying, hey, it looks fine, I wouldn't do it. And and sometimes I wouldn't, but I think if I think about it too many times, then I know it bothers me. And so I tore it back, and I'm not sorry I did. I added my next ball. I'm almost done with my second ball of yarn. Now this yarn This is how much I have left of my second ball of yarn. This yarn is Cloudborn yarn from Craftsy. I went crazy and bought a huge box full of Cloudborn yarn when they were having a sale. And this is the Alpaca Wool Silk DK. And it's in the Prism colorway. And I love this color. I made a shawl for a friend out of this same yarn, only in the fingering weight, and the same color. And it reads gray, which is, you know, great. I need a gray sweater. I don't have one. But it's actually kind of mauve-y, and it's got all different kinds of colors. But it is very difficult to show that. Now they have a picture of it on their website, which shows it really well. It almost shows it too well, because the people, you know, who have left comments have complained that this color isn't nearly as vibrant or obvious in person as it is in that picture. So it's hard to photograph this correctly, but I really love it. This is 45% alpaca, 25% merino wool, and 30% silk. And I do have to say I'm a little concerned about how this sweater is going to hold up in terms of keeping its shape. Alpaca and silk both. Neither of those bounce back like the wool, and I don't know that the percentage of wool is enough to keep it. I assume that's why they have that 25% over the wool. Did I just say 25%? Yeah, 25% wool. I hope it's enough. But I was watching the Fruity Knitting podcast. If you don't watch it, you should. It's a wonderful, professional podcast, unlike mine. Very professional, very knowledgeable knitter, Andrea. And she does interviews. And it's a wonderful podcast. I'm sure you've all seen it. But she was interviewing Ann Budd in the last one or 2 weeks ago or something like that. And Ann Budd was telling the story of making a beautiful sweater out of this blend, not Cloudborn, but, you know, this kind of blend that I have, and having the stylist ruin it by taking a steamer to it before the model got it, and it was just completely ruined. So I am a little concerned that this may end up growing. I might not make it quite as long. I really like the long length, but I have kind of short arms, and I want to use the pockets. And if the sweater is too long and my hands don't go to the bottom of the pocket, then I'm like trying to get stuff out of the bottom of my pocket. And I plan to use the pockets, which isn't going to keep it shaped great, but you know, that's the point of the sweater for me. So I might not make it quite so long. Just because it might grow with the wearing, and I will be wearing it a lot. It's going to be the winter version of this sweater, which is kind of a summery sweater because it's short sleeves. So anyway, so I have been working on this, and I will say that while it's not my favorite to do that 1x1 cross every other row on the back of this sweater, and of course it's across the whole back, I am enjoying it more than I was. I've been listening to books on tape, or audiobooks, showing my age there, books on tape. God, when was the last time you had a tape player? Oh my gosh. Anyway, I've been listening to audiobooks and just sitting there and knitting on it. And so I've gotten quite far, actually. I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm making progress. I mean, I obviously haven't, I'm only half, you know, this is how far I've gotten under the arm, and I have to go more than that again. So I still have plenty to do. So I am enjoying the knitting of this more than I had been, let me tell you, because I was not. And then when I had to tear it out, oh my gosh. But, well, right after I podcast last time, I was just sort of making myself knit 2 rows a day. Because I thought, if I knit 2 rows a day, like one of the cross rows and then rest row and call it a day, I would have that sweater done by the end of the winter. And I was, I was okay with that if that's what I had to do to get that sweater finished. But in the end, when I started listening to the books, that made it easier. And so I've gotten a lot farther than 2 rows a day. And I'm glad to say that. But while I was in the throes of the doldrums over that project, I decided I needed to cast on something that I would enjoy knitting, because I was feeling like I wasn't enjoying knitting that. And so I picked up Copenhagen Calling. I love this. I guess I want to look like Isabel Kramer, and I'm never going to do it. It's never happening. I'm never going to look like a slim, hip Danish woman, German, ever in my life. But it's a KAL that I have really had my eye on for a long time. And you'll notice the colors that she did it in. It's kind of a gray and a blue. Well, as it happened, I had some beautiful yarn that was given to me by the lovely Mean Girls. You don't think, with a name like Mean Girls, you wouldn't think they're lovely, but they are. Completely lovely, charming. And if you don't watch their podcast, you should. Love those girls. Anyway, they came and stayed with us last year after Rhinebeck, and they brought me this beautiful yarn as a thank you gift. And this is Dream in Color Jilly Cashmere, and one of them is 70 superwash, 20 cashmere, 10 nylon. One of them is a single and the other one is not, but they're both 70, 20, 10. One is called Jilly Cashmere and one is called Smushy Cashmere, and I don't know which is which because they don't have color names on, but these are the 2 colors that I used. It is raining outside. It is so dreary. I'm not getting any light from. Let's see if I can. That's better. Oh, I do have a lamp. So these beautiful colors. So this is a taupe. It's not really a gray. It's more like a taupe, and this beautiful blue. But I am really loving my Copenhagen Calling. I think I just have this much more of the lace again, and then it'll be done. Now, one thing, this is the kind of KAL that I worry about. I have a lot of trouble matching my cast on to my bind off in terms of stretchiness. And so KALs that start with a big giant cast on and you just do the width of the KAL and then you bind off at the end don't always work out for me. Like, I'm going to turn that off. I made a 3-color cashmere KAL by Hohilo Catelli. Oh, that's better. And that's not in my face. By Hohilo Catelli. And I never wear it because my cast on is so different than my bind off. Number one, I only have one way I can wear it because, anyway. So, I was reading the notes. I should read the notes on projects before I buy the pattern, and after, just FYI. That's my advice to you because, well, I'll tell you that story later, but I was buying this anyway. But anyway, someone suggested doing an I-cord cast on, which I had never done before. But I YouTubed it, and so I have a nice stretchy I-cord cast on, and I am hoping that a nice I-cord bind off at the end, which is not in the pattern. I'm hoping that my I-cord bind off is the same stretchiness as my I-cord cast on. So that is what I'm going to be doing. But I really enjoyed this mosaic part, and this is my Egyptian stitch marker. Thank you, Susan. I can't remember that. The jackal god. I forget his name. Pearl's been in my knitting. I have this. The lovely Mean Girls gave me a project bag too, which I've been using. Seattle coffee, because they're from the Pacific Northwest. But Pearl got into it. It's not a zipper bag. It's got a pull on it, and she ate the little gizmo that was keeping it closed, and she had my knitting out. She chewed on this when it was on my knitting. But she didn't hurt my knitting, and she only chewed it a little. I came downstairs yesterday. I didn't show you. This is my Portage. Is in this giant bag I got at SSK from the Fat Squirrel. I came down yesterday. I couldn't find this giant bag. I couldn't find it. It wasn't where I left it. It was over, tucked behind her bed, you know, in a corner. She loves my knitting. So this is it. This is the last time I'm putting my knitting in a drawstring bag. I like drawstring bags because zippers, sometimes you catch your yarn, but zippers are the only thing that keeps Pearl out. So I will be, until she calms herself down better, I will be using zipper bags, which I have plenty of. Don't worry, that's not a problem. So anyway, Copenhagen Culling by Isabel Kramer. Beautiful Dream in Color yarn that I got from the Mean Girls. And this is so gorgeous and squishy. And I'm very close to finishing this. So that might be an FO next time I see you, if Pearl doesn't unravel it. But I needed something fun to knit that I was looking forward to, because I was, you know, looking for other things to do besides knitting, because I didn't want to knit on the Portage because I was so disgusted with it for a while there. But I'm liking it better now, don't worry. But, you know, every time I come on my pocket, oh, you know, my funk is over, my mojo's back. I guess it takes longer. So sometimes I've been still feeling funky. A little funky. But not as bad as I was. And I am knitting. And knitting helps. You know, it's one of those vicious cycles. If you're too bummed to knit, then how is knitting going to help you feel better, you know? So the last thing I've actually been knitting on are these socks. You have seen these socks several times. I started these socks last fall, September or October. And I don't love the color. The color is called okay. Oh, here it is. It's Cory Sock by Flying Goat Farms. Now, I got this from my yarn box, which is out of business now. Flying Goat Farms. And it's Cory Sock by Flying Goat Farms. Now, I got this from my yarn box, which is out of business now. Flying Goat Farms. And I don't love the color, which is called Red Flannel. It's called Red Flannel, which is a great name for it. It does look like those flannel shirts, the color. But it is Corriedale, which is why I started it, even though I don't love the color, because I am very interested in using other kinds of wool. And and in fact, my fleece that I got at Maryland is Corriedale, which I'm still not totally finished working on, but whatever. Anyway, so the last time you saw these, I think I was right there. This is Luli's Halls with Socks with Holes in pattern. And I think I was right there. So I did a modified version. That sounds so, you know. I did a modified version of the Vanilla is the New Black heel. And it was modified because I made a mistake. and thought I had done more rows than I had. Actually, I made a few mistakes with these socks because I started them so long ago. I totally forgot. I did something new on with these socks that I'd never done before, and I totally forgot that because it was so long ago. But I'm doing these on size 0, and I think I cast on like 68 stitches. But when you're adding stitches and subtracting stitches and you don't know how many stitches you had to start with, you often don't end up with the right number. So I am quite sure I don't have 68 stitches on the foot, but that's going to be okay because I do like a tighter foot, so I'm hoping that'll be fine. But anyway, because I didn't know my stitch count, and I marked my paper wrong, and you know, I'm trying to reuse my paper instead of a new paper that keeps track of my rows. I ended up doing about a much shorter heel, kind of gusset. The vanilla is the new black sock. You basically increase at the back of the heel in a ribbed pattern, and then kind of turn the heel and then keep going. And that, you know, triangle of ribbing gives you, you know, creates the heel and gives you some space. Well, my triangle is much shorter, but I actually tried them on and they seem like they're going to fit me fine, so I'm not going to worry about it. So this is my modified vanillas and a new black heel. And I'm almost done. I think I only have about an inch more to go. Maybe 1.5 inches before it's time for me to start the toe. I've never had anything, that's a lie, I'm starting to tell you a lie. I was going to say I've never had anything on my needles this long that I actually finished, but that's not true. My original Bryce sweater was on my needles longer, and I did finish it. But I am not, this is the first time I've had more than one sock on the go because I knit these 2 pairs of socks while this was still on the needles. And that's the only time I've ever had more than one pair of sock on the go at the same time. That's not a lie. I'm quite sure. I've always just had one sock set, you know, pair of socks. So people who start a lot of socks and who have a lot of sock whips, I never did that. But this has been a sock whip for quite a long time. So I am looking forward to finishing that. This is what the yarn looks like. Kind of pinky reddy. It's a little redder than is showing there, but I have that in my Little Bobbins bunny bag. I had a tag on it, but Pearl ate it. It said Little Bobbins bunny bag on it, but it is no more. So anyway, see what I think about knitting my socks on a size 0, but you know, it's hard to know how I feel about it since I forgot that I was doing that, and so it's not really a great test of that, I suppose. Okay, so that's the knitting that I've been doing at home. This past Thursday, went to the Lancaster Fiber Festival. And this is the first year for the Lancaster Fiber Festival. And I had heard about it from the Crafty Toads. If you don't watch their podcast, you should. I love their podcast. And you know, we podcasters, we just, you know, watch each other and talk about each other. But I love the Crafty Toads, as you all know. And they dye yarn, which I love their dyeing. And they were vending at the Lancaster Fiber Festival, which is how I heard about it, because they announced it on their podcast. Now, last April, they were vending at the Allentown Fiber Festival, and I went to that, and that was a sort of vendor event. It was just booths and beauty, lots of great yarn, and, you know, that kind of thing. And I had it in my mind that the Lancaster Fiber Festival was the same thing. I didn't do any research to find out whether that was true or not. I just assumed that that's what it was. Well, it turns out that's not what it was. They, you know, they're doing a full-blown, you know, they have classes and they're, you know, but it's the first year It was a little bit of a clue when I saw the 3 days. I thought the 3 days were Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It wasn't. It was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So I thought, oh, that's a clue because Thursday's not going to be a big shopping day. So it's not just a, vendor's event. So I ended up signing up for a class. And I took a class. Melissa Leapman was the teacher for the knitting classes. And she was teaching quite a few classes. I think she taught 6 classes in 3 days. But, and there were other teachers. There was one class that I would have signed up for if I could have, which was the beginning brioche, because brioche is on my list of things to do. But that was Friday morning, and Friday morning was the only time, the whole time of this event that I couldn't go. I had a doctor's appointment. So I signed up for Melissa Leapman's class, which she called Workshop with Melissa Leapman. Ha, fooled you. And it was about different kinds of knitting that you could do that looked like something that it wasn't. Kind of. I mean, that was the theory of it. So basically she had a bunch of interesting techniques, and that's what the class was about. So I'll show you what I did. The first technique was mosaic knitting, which I just showed you in my Copenhagen Calling. In fact, the first 2 are actually so this is mosaic knitting, and it's sort of like faux Fair Isle essentially. So that's what I knit in my class. The second one was also actually faux Fair Isle, although it was faux mitered squares. So if you wanted to do something that looked like mitered squares, but you didn't want to actually do mitered squares, I made a mistake in this, so it doesn't look quite as miter squarey as it should, I think. But anyway, it was a way to make mitered squares out of mosaic knitting, essentially. I see on the paperwork there's a 4th one called faux woven fabric, which we did not actually do. Which is, looks like it would be interesting. It's basically mosaic knitting, but with the floats on the correct side of the fabric instead of the back, and it looks like it's woven. I'm going to have to try that and see. But the third thing was, she called it faux cable, but it's not a faux cable because you do real cables in it, in the process of making this. But it's a very fancy cable. And this, it's very, very, you can see, it's very 3-dimensional. And it's kind of cool. So that's what I did. So that's the class I took. And that was on Thursday morning. And it was pretty reasonably priced. It was $80, $85 for the class, for a 3-hour class, which I didn't think was terrible. And it got you what they called a hall pass, so you could go to the marketplace. Now, the marketplace, they were charging $12 to go to the marketplace. That's how much you pay to go to the marketplace at Vogue Knitting Live in New York City. I'm pretty sure. A 1-day pass is $12. So that's pretty pricey to just get into a marketplace, I thought. And as it turned out, there wasn't, there were some really lovely vendors, including the Crafty Toads, and Yakagani Yarn was there, and I love Yakagani Yarn. There were, probably half a dozen or 8, maybe, yarn booths. My nose is itchy. It always gets itchy when I podcast. 10 at the most. But this festival is not just yarn and knitting and crocheting. It's also about fabric and quilting. They had quilting classes and also paper and paper stuff. So the booths were quite eclectic. And, there were, I don't know how many booths. I don't know how many booths there were, but maybe 30. tops. I mean, it wasn't a huge market, and I thought $12 to get in was overpriced, personally. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the market, and I bought some stuff. But I bought some buttons from a button lady, and I bought some note cards and things like that, because there were paper people there too. But a couple of, and one of the dyers was from Silverton, Oregon, which is where my mother was born and raised, and my parents met and went to high school there. And, it's a little town not far from Salem, Oregon. I guess it's not as little as it used to be. It used to be kind of in the boonies and really small, but it's probably a suburb of Salem and maybe even a very, very, very far suburb of Portland. Somebody who really wanted to drive far. But anyway, that was kind of fun. She's like, I don't know anybody. I've only lived there 8 years and I'm never there. I don't know anybody. I'm like, it's okay. I don't know anybody there anymore either. My uncle. That's it. I did buy one skein of yarn, and I got it from the ladies at the Crafty at Toad Hollow NJ. It's the Circus of Dreams colorway, and it is beautiful. Now the ladies, I love their yarn, and I have, isn't that beautiful? Circus of Dreams is from the Night Circus, which is the book that they're reading in their, the Crafty Toads and Jake and Ray of Dogstar Makecast are doing a book club. And I have to confess and when Chevy Rell started talking about it too, I love Chevy Rell. If you haven't seen her podcast, check her out. I'm like, okay, fine. And I finally, my library canceled me. I got a notification that, my card expired and I had to do something and I never did it. And it's been quite a while. This is too bright. So I've been hearing people talk about, getting audiobooks from their library, and I didn't know how to do that. So I thought, let me go to the library, and I did. I went to the library and renewed my library card and got information about how to get ebooks and audiobooks from the library. And so the first ebook I got was The Night Circus, which I read in less than 24 hours. So Jake and Ray are doing a week by week, it's like the whole month is the book, and every week they're doing another set of chapters and things like, forget it. I just sat there and read it. I didn't even knit. So anyway, this color is based on the Night Circus. And I was so glad to see their yarn in person and see their booth and like really focus on their different yarn bases. Because I have a lot of yarn from them because I really like the way they dye their yarn and their colors. And so I have been a member of their monthly club since they started. And that is on their sock toad base, which is a beautiful 80-20 merino nylon base, which I love, and it feels gorgeous and whatever. But I hadn't really felt any of their other bases. And I I was ordering some yarn from them. I was commissioning them to make me some yarn, and I wanted to see some of their other bases. So this base is their Silky Toad, which is 70% superwash merino, 20% silk, and 10% cashmere. Silky Toad. Isn't that beautiful? So this color is called the Circus of Dreams, which is what the Night Circus is. Although it's in French, the name of the Night Circus. But I thought this was beautiful, so I pulled this color. Now I have asked them to make me, to dye me some yarn, and I'll tell you about that. So, this room, which is still a mess, and I have work to do in it. When I was working, I had a very long commute. My commute was 70 miles. I live in southeastern Pennsylvania, and my job was in Princeton, New Jersey, and so I had a 70-mile commute. And so I worked at home 1 day a week scheduled, and other days depending on the weather and the road conditions and that kind of stuff. And so this was my home office at that time. And I'm an analog kind of person, and so I always had a calendar right up on my wall right here. And in 2011, I got a calendar of art pictures. And September of 2011, I turned the page and there was Flaming June. And I loved that picture. I guess I'm a romantic. Here's Flaming June. And I don't remember who painted it. And I'll put that under here because I'll look it up when I'm editing. And that picture, and so September 2011 was on my wall until this past week when I took it down and took that picture in to the ladies to ask them to dye me some yarn. And so I'm going to get some orangey peachy yarn with speckles inspired by that picture. Now their Yarn of the Month Club this year is, you know, a year at the museum. So I just picked my own picture for inspiration and I ordered 2 skeins of that yarn in Silky Toad. So I am going to have a giant peachy, orangey shawl, silky, gorgeous shawl. And of course I will show you that yarn as soon as I get it. I told him no rush because I have a few things I can knit up in the meanwhile. But, so, and I, you know, like I said, I got some buttons and some odds and ends, but this is the only skein of yarn I got. I bought so much yarn at SSK, I'm still embarrassed by it. I haven't even gotten it in my Ravelry page yet. I'm not embarrassed, but it felt like enough. And I'm feeling like I'm getting to enough. I say that and I've just ordered 2 skeins of yarn to be dyed specifically for me. So, you know, take whatever I say with a grain of salt, I suppose. But anyway, I've been starting to feel like I have enough yarn for a while. And when I was lamp working, I was buying a lot, you know, every craft that I do is really 2 hobbies. One is buying the supplies and the tools and the, you know, things, and the other one is doing the craft. And I do that. I did that with my lamp working. I did it with my jewelry making, and I'm doing it with my knitting. So apparently, that's what I do. So I bought a lot of glass when I was a lamp worker, and finally I realized that the last year that I was really lamp working full time and, you know, like really doing it a lot, which I haven't been, and I am getting ready to go back to it. I said, you know, I'll buy black, I'll buy white, I'll buy, you know, ivory, the basics if I need them and I run out of them, clear, but that's all. I'm not buying any more. And they all, you know, they always have new colors coming out. It's like very much like yarn, only the packages are heavier by a lot. But it's the same idea. You know, it's gorgeous. It comes in and you can make something beautiful out of it. And glass, you know, has these transformative properties. Like you can turn, you know, they change, you know, the silver glasses, they get lustrous, or they, you know, like all kinds of cool stuff happens. So there's some cool glass out there. So it's very tempting to buy new glass. I did very well. I went until November, I think, before I bought glass. So almost a whole year. So I am thinking about trying to do that for 2019. I should warn you. That might make it a very boring acquisitions section of the podcast. But I'm starting to feel like maybe I have enough for a while. That'll change. That'll change. But I did buy one more thing. I bought this cute bag from Nancy of Round Rabbit. Oh, that's not her tag. Where's her tag? Ah, there There it is. So it's a pouch, and it opens out, and the zipper, it has a zipper. There's the round rabbit. And it opens really big. So this would be perfect for a one skein project, and then it zips up closed. But I'm using it for, this is my sit next to me notions downstairs, one, you know, where I sit in my, this is where I sit and knit. So everything I have has to have a zipper because Pearl takes it. So this is my giant, wonderful, amazing notions pouch that sits next to me on the table, and then I can zip it up securely and put it away at the end of the day, and it makes me smile. Isn't this cute? I love this design. I love this design. So there you go. That's my goodies. And I just think it's so clever. Doesn't have a handle, so I don't know about walking around knitting, but it's perfect for what I need it for, which is to hold my big thing of notions, so I have everything I need when I'm sitting there knitting. So what else did I want to talk about? Oh, one thing that, one booth at the Lancaster Fiber Festival was Lancaster Creative Reuse. We love starving artists, upcyclers, DIYers, dressmakers, needleworkers. Lancaster's Creative Reuse Center offers a donation-based art, craft, and sewing supply store. So they're a non-profit organization where they sell crafting materials really cheap because they're donated. And I was so excited to see this because I have a lot of stuff. I have stuff from my jewelry making that I really don't think I'm ever going to use. And, you know, you just don't want to take a bunch of components to Goodwill. It's like, really, is that the best way to do it? So I was so excited to find these people. Lancaster's about 30 miles from me, so, you know, I'm going to, you know, have to drive there, but it's not that far, and it's beautiful country. It's one of the top 10 destination vacation places in the country because it's so beautiful. So, anyway, and I love, you know, they show where it is and they tell you what bus route it's on. This is for people who, you know, who can't afford to spend as much money as I've been spending, for sure. So anyway, I was so glad to get this, and I am going to be keeping them in mind when I do clean up my room, because that's someplace I can take stuff that I'm decluttering and destashing and not really you know, not selling, but don't want to have anymore. So anyway, I was very glad to find them. That was worth the cost of the class, which I enjoyed a lot. And Melissa Leapman was really charming, and it was a lovely class. So my sister is coming to visit next week, and she's coming mainly to see my parents, but I'm picking her up at the airport and spending a couple days with her and then taking her to visit my parents. What else did I want to talk about? Okay, a couple of things. Last year we did an Advent swap, and it was kind of organized. A bunch of podcasters got together and organized it. That's not happening this year as far as I can tell, and I'm not organizing another swap. My swap, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the swapping, but somebody didn't send a package. Our little swap with, you know, 25 people, somebody didn't send a package. I couldn't believe it. So that was kind of a bummer. I mean, how terrible. You make a nice package for somebody and send it off and they don't send you a package back. So that's kind of a bummer. And there were some other issues with other things. And so I'm not going to be doing any kind of formal swap for a while because that was really a bummer. And I don't want to feel responsible for that kind of sad day or every week or however long when, you know, the package never comes. So I don't want to do anything formal, but I loved having the Advent swap. I love swapping. Now, I have already made arrangements with Megan. Hi, Megan. So I will be doing an Advent swap with my friend Megan, who I've swapped with before. This will be our third Christmas time swap. And she's in New Zealand, so that's fun. So we're doing an Advent swap. We've already discussed that last year. We got that all set up. But I'm very interested in doing at least one or two other Advent swaps. So if any of you would like to do an Advent swap with me, just say so in the show notes of this podcast. Say, I would love to swap with you, Advent swap, and we can just arrange to do our own Advent swap. And if more than 2 people want to do an Advent swap, then that's a place where people can put their name and you guys can pair up yourselves and just contact somebody. Everybody in our group is so lovely, except for the one person who didn't do their package. And if I see them, I'm sure they won't say they want to do an Advent swap if they didn't send their package. So, but I will pay attention to that. But so, if more than 2 people want to do an Advent swap, then you guys can just do an informal swap amongst yourselves if you want to, and you can put your name, say something in the thread, even if it goes beyond 2 people, because I think 3 Advent swaps are about my limit in terms of putting together minis and things like that. And then just whoever wants to swap with me, then we'll just do whatever kind of swap you're comfortable with in terms of minis. And I'm talking about swapping, you know, having 24 little packages with a mini in it and maybe a little tchotchke or a little something. You know, it's not a big deal. It's just something lovely to open every day in December. It doesn't have to be Christmas themed. I'm not a religious person, so I'm perfectly happy to do something else. I just really enjoyed it so much last year. I had the Advent swap that, and I swapped with Helen from the Crafty Toads for our personal swap, and then I had bought an Advent calendar from the Fiber Nymph Dye Works, which I really liked, but I didn't buy any Advent calendar this year. I decided that I just wanted to do the informal swaps. So, if anybody would like to swap with me, if not, that's fine too, because Megan and I are doing a swap, so I won't be swapless. Don't feel obliged to swap, because I'm swapping with Megan. And if that's all, and that will be enough for me if other people don't feel like swapping. But if you do feel like swapping, let me know. And the first 2 people who say swap with me, I'll swap. So, but I'm not doing anything formal. But you can swap amongst yourselves. And I'll keep an eye out for the person who didn't send the package. And let them know that. Maybe they shouldn't do that. The other thing is that I am not going to Rhinebeck this year. I live close enough to Rhinebeck, it's easy for me to go, but Dennis and I are going on a big vacation in October, and I did not schedule that very well. I don't know what I was thinking when I scheduled it, but I did not take Rhinebeck into consideration. And while we will be here for Rhinebeck, we would have been here for Rhinebeck, our big vacation starts the Tuesday after Rhinebeck is done. And we're going to Egypt. We are sailing up the Nile. We're doing an amazing trip. This is with our same people, Overseas Adventure Travel, and they put together an trip that's all within Egypt. And so Egypt was part of our trip last year, but only a small part. We spent more time in Jordan and in Israel than we did in Egypt. So we will be flying to Cairo, spending a couple days in Cairo, flying to Luxor from Cairo, spending a couple days in Luxor, and then we'll be getting on a sailing boat, a sort of traditional sailing boat. It's got a sail at the front and a sail at the back and no motor. It does have a skiff that can pull us if we need to be pulled, but no motor. It's a sailing boat. And we're going to sail up the Nile for 6 days. up to Aswan, and we'll get off and we'll be up there for a couple of days. And then we're going to spend a couple of days in Alexandria at the end of the trip. So anyway, amazing, crazy, amazing trip that we're very excited about. And the main part of the trip starts the Tuesday after Rhinebeck. So I thought I was going to go to Rhinebeck. And in fact, Connie from Chili Knits and her husband Danny are coming to visit and stay with us for a few days before they go to Rhinebeck. She has to be up there the Thursday before Rhinebeck starts. So they're coming Tuesday. I think they arrive Tuesday. So we'll have a couple days with them, and that will be my Rhinebeck adventure with Connie and Danny. We're going to take them around Philadelphia, and they're going to stay with us for a couple of days before they go off on their Rhinebeck adventure. And so Dennis and I are actually leaving early, and we're going to spend a couple of days in London on our way to Egypt to break up the trip over and take advantage of the fact that we're going to be flying through Europe. We might as well make the most of it and get a little over our jet lag before we get to Cairo. So I'm not going to Rhinebeck. Nobody's feeling sorry for me. I don't blame you. So basically what I did was I traded a couple of days with my husband in London for Rhinebeck this year. And I'm going to have a wonderful time, and everybody who's going to Rhinebeck will have a wonderful time, and it'll all be good. But I am not regretting that decision because I'm looking forward to London. That should be fun. And we will have a couple days to get over our jet lag before we go on to Egypt, which is I'm so excited about. We sent our passports off to get our visas this past week. So that was fun. The only other thing I can think of is I made spicy pickled green beans yesterday. I'm so excited. I canned them. I don't know that I've ever canned anything before. My mother used to can when I was a kid. But I love spicy pickled green beans. The Allentown Fiber Festival, they had a booth where they were selling other things. You know, they were selling pickles and stuff. And I bought spicy pickled green beans because they were the only pickly things there that didn't have sugar in them. We do low carb, so we don't want sugar. And I really liked them. And it turns out you can make them at your home. So we did that. So I made 8 jars of spicy pickled green beans. I hope I like them. I hope I didn't make them too spicy. I bought some jalapenos and put some sliced jalapeno in my jars. I'm hoping they're not too spicy. But I won't know for a week because you're not supposed to eat them for at least a week. So they're soaking in their stuff in there. But I canned them. So it was so fun to sit there yesterday and hear them pop when the lids go down. It was, anyway. So that was my big excitement yesterday. I canned spicy pickled green beans, and I'm so excited to see how they turn out. Okay, I think that's it. I think I'll stop talking now. I hope you have lots and lots of time to do the crafting that brings you joy, and I will see you later.